X, what are your views are on the "if you aren't with me, then you are my enemy" attitude? Sorry for using a meme, but I think it sums up people's attitudes the best. Also, have you done a video on this already? I have not, NZG Berg. I don't think it would summarize up people's attitudes the best, because I think there are a variety of different attitudes that people have. But that attitude, I do think, is somewhat unproductive and maybe a little bit irrational. You know, I've brought this up many times, but there is a sort of opinion that floats around, an idea, a way of looking at the world, which is like, oh, we're a warring people. We've got a history of war and fighting one another. And so, you know, you're either on my side or you're not, right? Well, history has a lot of death and war in it. It's also got a heck of a lot of cooperation that we don't focus on in between that. So many of the fruits of the things we enjoy in life come from cooperation. I mean, all you got to do is look at whatever you're using to watch this stream. Smartphone, computer, on a monitor, listening to it on some headphones. Can you make any of that stuff? Can anyone hear from scratch? Okay, I'm not talking like, oh yeah, I could order some components from the electronics store and put together a little, a little speaker to listen to it on. Could you build the computer from scratch? Well, I could order some motherboard parts. No. What I mean is, can you make a motherboard? Can you make a transistor? Like, all this stuff we've got that we've made comes from a lot of cooperative and collaboration. A lot of people working together. And when I say working together, I'm talking about the day by day, going to your job, just saying hi to your neighbor. There's so much of that gets overlooked when we talk about this war mindset. It's like there's these moments of madness where we go and decide to kill one another, and they take up a lot of time and attention, and they're certainly a big deal. I'm not trying to diminish the deal that it is, but it's a small part of everything. Well, not a small part. It's a part of everything that's going on, and perhaps in comparison to the amount of cooperation, it might actually be a smaller part than you think, because destroying things tends to be easier than creating. Everyone can throw a glass at a wall and break it, but making it takes a lot more effort than it does to destroy it, right? So that's kind of like the same with war. It can be big, drastic. It can make you think all these things about the enemy and the other people and what's wrong in the world, but it's the exertion of a destructive force. It has the power to be destructive, yet, all the cooperation that comes before it to even make a war possible. A lot of cooperation to make weapons. And so this whole idea of you're either on my side or you're not, I think it lacks an appreciation for the interconnectivity between people and how reliant on one another we are, right? This idea of being independent and self-sufficient is quite common, but in this day and age, if you're a self-sufficient, independent person, it probably means that you can drive a car and go to the shops and pick things to eat off the shelf. Doesn't mean that you can go out into the wild and forage for food and build shelter and survive. So I think I like to try and look for something positive and lean in a positive direction. And for me, that would be seeing the commonality with other people, and also how connected and dependent on one another we are for the things in our lives. So if there's someone holding this stance of like, you're either on my side or you're not, when they go to the shop and they buy some food, right? Now I'm going to use a particular side here just because I saw this image the other day that cracked me up. Someone was tweeting out like a picture of them standing with these like big guys with guns, and it was like, "Come at me, libs," or something was the quote on their tweet, and it cracked me up. I was just like, oh, what is going on in your head? Somehow people with a different opinion than you are like, there's some mental war going on in your mind. I guess I was thinking that I tend to see it more on the right, the more stick my feet in the ground. I stand for this, and if you're not with me, you're against me. So to use that woman who tweeted out the picture of her and her friends ready to fight the libs, God, as an example, like when you go to the store and buy something, right, those things were put together by people, and there's a significant chance the people that put them together don't share your views. So you're kind of connected with these other people anyway. So I find it all a little bit like, not hypocritical, but just nearsighted and not seeing how dependent on one another we are. And I think if we realize that more, we could have some more tolerance for people with other opinions. I'm really tolerant of people with other opinions. When someone has a different opinion to me, it's like, well, you've had a different life experience. You've been exposed to different information. I do not know what those informations you've been exposed to are, but if we don't have the ability to talk to one another, I'm not going to be able to find out and learn. And I think it's interesting to learn from other people. Lets you understand their perspectives. Maybe it changes some of your own. Maybe you hear about things you'd never thought of before. And if we're going to get into this entrenched position of being against that lot, against this lot, you're going to cut off the ability to give yourself the opportunity to learn. So anyway, going back to the whole cooperation thing, Harrow says that, cooperation can lead to evil, i.e., cooperation, working together, scientists creating the atomic bomb or whatever, right? Like, so when I said earlier about like throwing a glass at a wall and breaking it, and it's easier to break it than it is to make it, the same thing kind of applies. People can be destructive in groups as well, right? So for me, I'm looking at it more like it's about seeing what's out there in the world, seeing what's possible, and realizing that there is a lot of cooperation. So the argument of the atomic bomb doesn't really like fit into the way I'm looking at it. So it's hard to really put a comment on that because I feel like I haven't got your line of thinking, right? Like I don't quite see how they connect in that way. But there could be a connection. I'm not dismissing it. I just like you can listen to people make points and not understand their logic sometimes, right? And at some point, maybe there's some language that can bridge that gap. But a group isn't inherently destructive, says Fuel Hauler. Exactly, that's the point, right? It's the same as, you can throw a bottle at the wall, and it's easy to do something destructive. It's easier to break the bottle than it is to build one. And so if people are doing it in groups, it's not really the group that makes the difference, is it? It's the same thing. Okay, Hugh says it's quite a privilege to say that, though, for some who are genuinely persecuted. Gotcha. Yeah, if I were in different shoes, I might feel differently about it. I'm not, though, so it's kind of hard for me to look at it that way. I guess instinctively, I still feel like it's the same thing, because someone being persecuted is, again, a destructive force. Like, it's always easier to be judgmental and dismissive than it is to be tolerant and accepting. Although, as I say that out loud, I don't know, it feels, I don't know if easier is actually the right word. Like, I don't feel like it's challenging to be tolerant and accepting of other people. But maybe you have to come that way a fair distance for it to then become easy. I don't know. That's something to think on. Because I'm aware of how my own position in life will influence my thoughts. And so it can be easy perhaps to overlook something like that. But, just off the top of my head, it's not like a blind spot that all of a sudden I get, but it's something that just needs to be thought about more. Tolerance can be challenging if you have been taught to hate or judge in a certain way, says Mushroom Mummy. Yeah, and I really find the language of saying that hatred is taught very interesting. That's quite a thing to say, that it's taught, right? I think I agree with that. A way of thinking for the most part, because people can learn to see things the other way, and learn being the key word there, right? If I think of it as like you can unlearn racism and bigotry, then you obviously learned it. I think that makes sense. But yeah, we need to just share the positive ideas of inclusion and tolerance for one another. So Maximus, I'm reading your message and I'm going to summarize it. But what bothers you is that people don't want to learn to see things the other way. Yeah, that is unfortunately a bias that we have as people, to want to be right. I think if you think about things from a survival perspective, it's a case of like, in order to survive the environment in the wild, you need to be confident and you need to be right about stuff. Indecision is a killer. Having a little bit of experience with leadership, one of the things that I've learned about it is that making decisions over like indecision is really important. You don't want to get stuck not being able to just pull the trigger essentially and make a call that will get something done. And it might not be the best thing, but sometimes, it's no thing is worse than the best, not the best thing. Totally butchered that. But anyway, you have this strong instinct to gravitate towards wanting to be right? Like, how many things about reality do you think you're right about? It's like a thing in the mind to want to be right, because it's a mechanic. You need to be confident and right about dangers and threats in your environment. So in this modern age, we're kind of a little bit beyond the need for that, because it's not quite like being out there in the wild. So people don't like having their viewpoints challenged and tend to not like being taught wrong. But I'll tell you, being taught wrong is a blessing. When you are told you are wrong about something, hey, dude, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, it equals 2. Okay? You have now been blessed with the correct knowledge. And that can be useful. What if you're in a tight situation, someone's got a gun to your head and they're like, dude, I will remove this gun if you tell me what 1 + 1 equals. And you're like, it's 3. The world says 2, but I know it's 3, and I won't change my opinion. Okay, it's a stupid little scenario, but I can't think of anything that's actually a bit more cohesive. But maybe you see my point. Once you've been proven wrong, now you know what's right. It's a blessing. It's a good thing. And I think we would all do well to keep that in mind.